December 3, 1966. 82,000 feet above the Laotian Panhandle. The State Route 71 Blackbird cuts through the stratosphere like a knife through silk. Major Thomas Razor Hendricks feels the G-forces press against his pressure suit as the reconnaissance jet maintains Mach 3.2, 3 times the speed of sound. Outside his cockpit window, the curvature of Earth bends against an indigo sky. Below, hidden beneath triple canopy jungle, lies a secret that will change the war. Camera bay active, comes the voice of his reconnaissance systems officer, Captain Dale Morrison, through the intercom. "We're over the target zone now." Hendricks keeps the stick steady. He doesn't need to see the jungle floor to know what's down there. Intelligence estimates suggest somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 North Vietnamese troops are moving through Laos at any given time, ferrying supplies south along a network of trails that shouldn't exist. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, named mockingly by American intelligence after North Vietnam's leader, has become a ghost road, appearing and disappearing like smoke. But ghosts leave footprints. The high-resolution cameras mounted in the SR-71's belly are capturing images so detailed they can identify individual tire tracks from 15 miles up. Each photograph is a piece of a puzzle that CIA analysts and military intelligence officers have been desperately trying to solve since 1959. How do you stop an enemy you can't see? 30 seconds to end of run, Morrison announces. Hendricks watches his instruments. Fuel consumption optimal. No surface-to-air missile warnings. The North Vietnamese don't even know they're being watched. The Blackbird is flying too high, too fast. By the time any radar operator on the ground processes the blip on his screen, the jet will be 100 miles away. What Hendricks doesn't know, what nobody in the U.S. military fully understands yet, is that they're about to win a battle that will never be fought. 3,000 miles away, at the National Photographic Interpretation Center in Washington, D.C., analysts are hunched over light tables, examining photographs from previous reconnaissance runs. They're not looking at random jungle. They're watching an artery. A 16,000-kilometer network of roads, footpaths, and waterways that stretches from North Vietnam, through Laos and Cambodia, into South Vietnam. The trail isn't one road, it's hundreds, constantly shifting, adapting, evolving. And for the first time in the war, the Americans are beginning to see all of it. Section 2. The Invisible Highway. January 1967. Defense Intelligence Agency Headquarters, Washington, D.C. Colonel Robert Simmons spreads the satellite imagery across the conference table like a surgeon laying out X-rays. 15 senior officers lean forward, their eyes widening as they process what they're seeing. The photographs, taken by KH-4 Corona satellites and high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft, show something that wasn't supposed to exist: infrastructure. "Gentlemen," Simmons begins, tapping a pointer against a photograph showing a thin line carved through dense jungle. "This is Route 914. It didn't exist 6 months ago." The room falls silent. One of the officers, a brigadier general from the Strategic Air Command, picks up a magnifying glass and examines the image more closely. He can see vehicle tracks. Storage depots camouflaged beneath trees. What looks like a fuel cache. "How many routes have we identified?" someone asks. "As of this morning, 214. Simmons pulls out another folder, this one stamped Top Secret in red ink. "And that's just what we can confirm. Our photo interpreters believe there could be twice that many." The Ho Chi Minh Trail began as a simple footpath in 1959, used by a few hundred North Vietnamese cadres infiltrating south to support the insurgency against the Saigon government. By 1964, it had grown into a network of trails that could move several thousand troops per year. Now, in early 1967, it's become something unprecedented in military history. A logistic system that's simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. But the Americans have developed new eyes. The KH-4 Corona satellites, launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, orbit Earth every 90 minutes. Their cameras capturing swaths of Vietnamese and Laotian territory with resolution fine enough to spot a bicycle. The film canisters are ejected from orbit, caught mid-air by specially equipped C-130 aircraft over the Pacific, then rushed to processing facilities where teams of analysts examine every frame. If you're fascinated by how technology changed warfare, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started with this story. The State Route 71 Blackbird missions, like the one Major Hendricks flew, provide real-time reconnaissance that satellites can't match. Flying at altitudes where the sky turns black and the stars become visible even in daylight, these jets photograph the trail with such detail that analysts can identify individual truck types, count personnel, and map new construction within hours of it appearing. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, a photo interpreter at the National Photographic Interpretation Center, spends 12-hour shifts examining these images through stereoscopic viewers that make the flat photographs appear three-dimensional. She's become an expert at spotting the trail's camouflage techniques. They're using cut vegetation to cover new roads, she explains to a visiting general, pointing at what looks like unbroken jungle. But the vegetation wilts within 48 hours. See this discoloration? That's a truck park built within the last 2 days. February 1967. Hanoi, North Vietnam. General Võ Nguyên Giáp sets down the intelligence report with hands that tremble slightly, not from age, but from anger. The architect of France's defeat at Dien Bien Phu, the man who helped design the Ho Chi Minh Trail itself, is reading something that should be impossible. The Americans know. They photographed Binh Tram 14, his aide says quietly. Binh Tram way stations are the trail's logistics nodes, positioned every 30 to 40 kilometers, where trucks refuel, drivers rest, and supplies are sorted for the final push south. They're supposed to be invisible, hidden beneath triple canopy jungle, camouflaged so effectively that even low-flying reconnaissance aircraft shouldn't spot them. Except the Americans aren't flying low anymore. Giap walks to the map covering his office wall. Pins mark the trail's major routes, color-coded by priority. Red for primary roads capable of handling Soviet-built trucks. Blue for secondary routes, mostly foot traffic. Green for waterways. The network looks like a circulatory system, and in many ways it is. Blood for the war effort in the South. How much do they see? He asks. His aide hesitates. Sir, based on recent bombing patterns, we believe they can track real-time movement. The room falls silent. Real-time surveillance means the Americans can watch trucks leave Hanoi, follow them down the trail, and know exactly where they'll be hours or even days later. It means the myth of the trail's invisibility, the very thing that's allowed North Vietnam to move 60,000 troops and thousands of tons of supplies south in 1966 alone, might be ending. But Giap doesn't panic. He's been fighting technologically superior enemies for 20 years. He closes his eyes, thinking. Double the camouflage protocol, he orders. All movement restricted to nighttime. Increase the number of dummy routes. I want them photographing empty jungle. And triple our anti-aircraft defenses. What Giap understands, what many of his subordinates don't, is that seeing isn't the same as stopping. The Americans might have won the intelligence war, but intelligence without action is just expensive photography. 300 miles south, on a section of the trail in Laos, Senior Colonel Dang Van Sun receives new orders that reflect Giap's strategy. Sun commands a transportation group responsible for moving supplies through the Central Corridor, one of the trail's most vulnerable sections. He's been doing this since 1965, and he's never been caught. Until now. They bombed the river crossing at Ban La Boy, his deputy reports. 12 trucks destroyed. The bridge is gone. Sun studies his own maps. Ban La Boy was supposed to be secret. It's 30 kilometers off the main route, hidden in a valley where overhead reconnaissance shouldn't spot it. But someone did. When did we use that crossing? 3 days ago, Comrade Colonel. 3 days. Which means the Americans photographed it, analyzed the images, planned the strike, and executed it, all within 72 hours. The timeline is terrifying. March 1967. Nha Trang Air Base, South Vietnam. Captain Jerry Hawk Dawson watches the mission planning officer tape aerial photographs to the briefing room wall. Each image shows a section of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, marked with red circles indicating suspected truck parks, storage depots, and anti-aircraft positions. The intelligence is fresh, less than 18 hours old. Gentlemen, the MPO begins, addressing the assembled F-4 Phantom crews. Tonight's target is a truck convoy spotted by satellite imagery this morning, approximately 40 clicks inside Laos. Dawson leans forward. 40 kilometers into Laos. Technically neutral territory. Officially, they're not supposed to be bombing Laos at all. Unofficially, everyone knows that's where the war is really being fought. The briefing continues with technical details: approach altitude, egress routes, expected anti-aircraft defenses. But what strikes Dawson is the specificity of the intelligence. The MPO isn't guessing where the trucks might be. He's showing them photographs of actual vehicles, parked under trees, waiting for nightfall when they'll resume their journey south. How do we know they'll still be there? Someone asks. We don't, the MPO admits. But signals intelligence suggests this convoy stops here every night. They've been following the same pattern for a week. Signals intelligence. Another piece of the puzzle. In addition to satellites and spy planes, the U.S. has deployed EC-121 electronic warfare aircraft that orbit Laos and North Vietnam, intercepting radio communications. They've learned that North Vietnamese truck drivers, despite orders to maintain radio silence, often can't resist communicating with their base stations, especially when they're lost, which happens frequently on the constantly shifting trail routes. Drop a comment below and let us know. Do you think technology or boots on the ground matter more in war? The Americans have also deployed ground sensors along the trail, acoustic devices and seismic detectors that can pick up the vibration of truck engines from miles away. These sensors, dropped by aircraft and camouflaged to look like vegetation, transmit data to orbiting aircraft, which relay it to analysis centers. The system, codenamed Igloo White, can detect trucks moving even under heavy jungle canopy. April 1967. The White House, Washington, D.C. President Lyndon Johnson studies the intelligence summary with growing frustration. The document details everything U.S. Reconnaissance has discovered about the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Detailed route maps, truck counts, supply tonnages, even weather patterns that affect traffic flow. It's the most complete picture of enemy logistics any American military has ever possessed. And yet, the trail keeps flowing. We know where they are, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara explains, standing beside a map of Southeast Asia. Our reconnaissance has mapped 90% of their major routes. We can track convoys in real time. We have target folders for every major way station from North Vietnam to the Cambodian border. Then why, Johnson interrupts, his Texas drawl sharpening with irritation, are they still moving supplies? The answer is political, and everyone in the room knows it. Laos is officially neutral. Cambodia claims to be neutral. Bombing either country means expanding the war, risking Chinese or Soviet intervention, and facing international condemnation. The trail exists precisely because it runs through countries the U.S. is reluctant to attack. We're conducting limited strikes, McNamara continues, under Operation Steel Tiger and Operation Tiger Hound. But the rules of engagement prohibit us from hitting many of the targets we've identified. Johnson slams his palm on the desk. Then what's the point of all this intelligence if we're not going to use it? It's a question that haunts American military commanders throughout 1967. They have unprecedented surveillance capabilities. Satellites that can read license plates from space, aircraft that can photograph targets while traveling faster than rifle bullets, electronic sensors that can hear a truck engine from 10 miles away. But they're fighting a war with one hand tied behind their back. Admiral U.S. Grant Sharp, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Command, has been arguing for months that the U.S. should mine Haiphong Harbor, bomb Hanoi's industrial base, and systematically destroy every inch of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, regardless of where it runs. His proposals are consistently rejected. "We're giving them a free pass through Laos and Cambodia," Sharp tells his staff. "We might as well put up road signs directing them south." The numbers support his frustration. In 1966, North Vietnam moved approximately 60,000 troops and 50,000 tons of supplies down the trail. In 1967, despite improved American reconnaissance and increased bombing, those numbers are projected to double. The trail isn't just surviving American technology, it's thriving despite it. May 1967. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, Laos. Private Nguyen Van Duc walks in darkness so complete he can't see his own hands. He's part of a transportation battalion tasked with moving 100 tons of rice, ammunition, and medical supplies from a way station near the Vietnamese border to a guerrilla base near the demilitarized zone, a journey of 800 kilometers that will take 40 days. He knows the Americans are watching. "Stay under the trees," his squad leader whispers. "Never stop in clearings. If you hear aircraft, freeze." The battalion has adapted to American surveillance in ways that would impress any military strategist. They move only at night, when satellites can't photograph them. They use horses and bicycles on smaller trails where truck engines would be detected by acoustic sensors. They've learned to recognize the sound of reconnaissance aircraft and have developed an almost supernatural ability to sense when they're being watched. The trucks still roll, but they've become ghosts. Drivers now remove their headlights and navigate by moonlight or by following white stones placed along the road edges. They've learned that American photo interpreters look for heat signatures from engines, so they've started using cooling systems that dissipate heat more efficiently. Some sections of the trail now feature false routes, carefully maintained roads that lead nowhere, designed to waste American bombs. Like this video if you're amazed by how adaptable these soldiers were, and stick around, because this story gets even more intense. Colonel Sun has implemented a deception program that's proving remarkably effective. His engineers build dummy truck parks, complete with wooden truck silhouettes covered in camouflage netting. They light fires in false positions to simulate cooking areas. They even dig fake bunkers and trenches that satellites photograph, wasting American intelligence analysts' time. The real supplies move on parallel routes, sometimes just a few hundred meters away from the decoys. The Americans have cameras, Sun tells his officers, but cameras can't tell the difference between a real truck and a convincing fake. Let them bomb shadows. The strategy works because the U.S. intelligence system, for all its technological sophistication, has a fundamental weakness. It generates too much data. Photo interpreters are overwhelmed with thousands of images every day. Even with the best training, they miss things. They make mistakes. And the North Vietnamese have learned to exploit those mistakes. June 1967. Over Laos. Captain Dawson's F-4 Phantom punches through scattered clouds at 450 knots, his wingman tucked in close on his right. Below, the Laotian jungle spreads out like a green ocean, unbroken except for the occasional karst limestone formation jutting up like a ship's sail. Bulldog lead, this is Hillsborough, comes the voice of the airborne command post orbiting 30,000 feet above. Your target is a truck park, coordinates on data link now. Dawson's weapons systems officer, Lieutenant Mike Woody Woods, checks the coordinates against their map. Got it. 15 clicks ahead. They're flying Operation Steel Tiger, the code name for interdiction missions along the Laotian section of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It's dangerous work. The North Vietnamese have turned the trail into one of the most heavily defended airspaces in the world, with hundreds of anti-aircraft guns positioned to create a wall of fire that aircraft must fly through to reach their targets. Flak ahead, Woody calls out. Dawson sees it. Black puffs of smoke appearing in the sky like malignant flowers. 37 mm anti-aircraft fire, radar-guided. He banks left, then right, jinking to avoid creating a predictable pattern. The F-4 4 shutters as a shell explodes close enough to rattle the airframe. Target ahead, 10 o'clock, Woody announces. Dawson rolls the Phantom into a 40-degree dive. Through his heads-up display, he can see the target, a cluster of structures barely visible beneath camouflage netting. The intelligence photograph showed 12 trucks. He's bombing blind, hoping the photo interpreters got it right. He releases his bomb load, 12 Mk-82 500-pound bombs, and pulls up hard, the G-forces pressing him into his seat. Behind him, the jungle erupts in fire and smoke. Good hits, Woody confirms. Secondary explosions, which means they hit something that burned, fuel, maybe ammunition. But Dawson has flown enough of these missions to know that good hits doesn't mean mission accomplished. Even if they destroyed all 12 trucks, there are thousands more. And the trail itself is virtually indestructible. Bomb a road, and within 48 hours, North Vietnamese engineers will have it repaired. Between 1965 and 1968, the U.S. will drop more bombs on the Ho Chi Minh Trail than were dropped on Germany during all of World War II. It won't be enough. July 1967. MACV Headquarters, Saigon. General William Westmoreland, commander of U.S. Military Assistance Command Vietnam, reviews the latest intelligence estimates with his J-2, the intelligence chief. The numbers are damning. Despite the most sophisticated reconnaissance system ever deployed, despite thousands of bombing sorties, despite billions of dollars invested in technology, the Ho Chi Minh Trail is moving more supplies south than ever before. Current estimates suggest 150,000 North Vietnamese troops will infiltrate South Vietnam in 1967 alone. We're winning the intelligence war, the J-2 says, but losing the interdiction war. Westmoreland knows why. Political restrictions prevent attacks on the most critical targets. The ports where supplies arrive from the Soviet Union and China, the rail yards in Hanoi where those supplies are sorted, the border crossing points where the trail begins. Instead, American forces are attacking the trail itself, trying to cut off supply lines while the enemy can simply reroute around the damage. It's like trying to stop a river by throwing rocks into it. The intelligence community has provided Westmoreland with detailed analysis of Bin tram stations, the waypoints that make the trail function. Destroy these stations, the repair shops, fuel depots, hospitals, and command centers, and the trail would cease to function. But many of these stations are located in areas where bombing is politically prohibited. We're fighting with both hands tied, Westmoreland tells his staff. The enemy knows it, and they're exploiting it. The North Vietnamese have learned that American reconnaissance, for all its sophistication, operates within predictable patterns. Satellites pass overhead on fixed schedules. State Route 71 missions follow established routes. Even the ground sensors can be fooled by creating ambient noise, running trucks in circles in areas away from actual supply routes to overwhelm the system with false data. General Giap has turned American technological superiority into a weakness. The U.S. has so much intelligence that it's drowning in data, unable to process it fast enough to turn information into effective action. And the political restrictions ensure that even when targets are identified, many cannot be attacked. August 1967. Photo Interpretation Center, Washington, D.C. Lieutenant Sarah Chen rubs her eyes, fighting exhaustion. She's been examining stereoscopic photographs for 11 hours straight, searching for signs of new trail construction. The work is meticulous, maddening, and absolutely critical. Found something, she calls out to her supervisor. On the light table before her, a photograph shows what looks like unbroken jungle. But Chen has been doing this long enough to spot the telltale signs. Shadows that fall wrong, vegetation that's too uniform, a slight discoloration that suggests recently disturbed earth. New road construction, she says, marking the photograph with a grease pencil. Approximately 12 meters wide, running northeast-southwest. Built within the last week. Her supervisor examines the image through the stereoscope. Good catch. That's the third new route this month in that sector. It's a cat-and-mouse game played at the speed of technological development. The Americans build better cameras. The North Vietnamese build better camouflage. The U.S. deploys electronic sensors. North Vietnam develops techniques to fool them. Each side adapts, evolves, innovates. But behind the technology are human beings making life-and-death decisions. Chen thinks about the people in the photographs she analyzes, the truck drivers, the engineers, the soldiers walking the trail. They're enemy combatants, but they're also humans trying to survive in a war zone. When she marks a target for bombing, she knows she's potentially condemning people to death. It's not something she talks about with her colleagues. But late at night, alone in her apartment, she sometimes wonders if the intelligence war is worth the human cost. Across the Pacific, Captain Dawson is having similar thoughts. He's flown 63 combat missions over the trail, dropped hundreds of bombs, seen dozens of explosions. But he's never seen the faces of the people he's bombing. They exist only as targets on a map, coordinates on a data link. Do you ever think about them? He asks Woody one night over beers at the officers' club. The enemy? The people. Woody is quiet for a moment. Every day. September 1967. The Ho Chi Minh Trail. The monsoon rains turn the trail into a river of mud, but the supplies keep moving. Private Nguyen Van Duc, now a veteran of 4 months on the trail, pushes his bicycle through ankle-deep water. The bicycle, a reinforced Chinese model, carries 200 kilograms of rice, twice Duke's own body weight. He's learned to read the jungle like a book. The sound of distant jet engines tells him to seek cover. The pattern of broken branches indicates where previous convoys passed. The smell of disturbed earth warns of recent bombing. The Americans are overhead constantly now. Duke has seen reconnaissance aircraft so high they appear as nothing more than contrails against blue sky. He's heard the deep rumble of B-52's carpet bombing distant sections of the trail. He's walked past craters so large that entire trucks could fit inside them. But he's still walking. The trail has become a living organism, constantly adapting to survive. When one route is bombed, 3 more appear. When the Americans deploy sensors, North Vietnamese engineers move supplies on new paths outside the sensor range. When bombing intensifies during dry season, more supplies move during the wet season, when cloud cover limits reconnaissance effectiveness. If this story has opened your eyes to how complex this war really was, consider subscribing. We cover the untold stories that textbooks miss. Colonel Sun has realized something that American planners are only beginning to understand. The trail isn't a military target that can be destroyed. It's a concept, a strategy, a way of life for thousands of soldiers and civilians who are willing to endure any hardship to move supplies south. They can photograph every tree, he tells his officers, but they cannot break our will. By the end of 1967, despite the most intensive reconnaissance and bombing campaign in history, North Vietnam will have moved 200,000 troops and 60,000 tons of supplies down the trail, double the previous year's total. American technology has provided unprecedented visibility into enemy operations, but visibility without the political will to act decisively has proven insufficient. The intelligence war has been won. But the larger war continues, fed by a supply line that seems impossible to cut. December 1967. Pentagon, Washington, D.C. The after-action report sits on Secretary McNamara's desk, 300 pages of analysis that can be summarized in a single sentence. We know everything, and it's not enough. U.S. reconnaissance has mapped the Ho Chi Minh Trail with unprecedented accuracy. Satellites and spy planes have photographed every major route, way station, and supply depot. Electronic sensors have tracked thousands of truck movements. Photo interpreters have identified construction patterns, traffic flows, and defensive positions. And yet, North Vietnam's logistical system continues to function, continues to grow, continues to feed the war in the south. McNamara understands what the military commanders have been arguing for months. Intelligence without action is just expensive information. The political restrictions that prevent attacking targets in North Vietnam, that limit bombing in Laos, that prohibit operations in Cambodia, these restrictions have created a sanctuary where the enemy can operate with relative impunity. But removing those restrictions means expanding the war, potentially triggering Chinese or Soviet intervention, and accepting domestic political costs that President Johnson is unwilling to pay. It's the central paradox of the Vietnam War: overwhelming technological superiority confronting an enemy willing to endure overwhelming casualties in pursuit of victory. The reconnaissance systems developed for Vietnam, the satellites, the sensors, the photo interpretation techniques, will revolutionize military intelligence for decades to come. The State Route 71 Blackbird will serve until 1999. The KH-series satellites will evolve into systems that can read newspaper headlines from orbit. The electronic warfare techniques will become standard in every future conflict. But in 1967, these capabilities aren't enough to stop the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Major Hendricks, the State Route 71 pilot who flew reconnaissance over the trail back in December 1966, has completed his tour and returned to the United States. He's given briefings to intelligence officers, showing them photographs of the trail that are so detailed you can see individual footprints. Can we stop it? Someone always asks. Hendricks has learned to give the honest answer: we can see it. Stopping it is someone else's job. Lieutenant Chen continues analyzing photographs, marking targets, tracking the trail's evolution. She's become so skilled at spotting camouflaged positions that she's training new photo interpreters. But she's also begun to understand the limitations of technology. We can photograph them, she tells a trainee, but they're smart enough to use that against us. They know we're watching, so they show us what they want us to see. Captain Dawson flies his 100th mission over the trail in December. He'll receive the Distinguished Flying Cross for his service. He'll also carry memories of explosions lighting up the jungle, of anti-aircraft fire that came so close he could feel the heat, of targets that were there one day and gone the next. Years later, when asked about the trail, he'll say simply, "We fought shadows. We fought will. And you can't bomb will into submission." 1968 and beyond. The Tet Offensive in January 1968 will prove Colonel Sun and General Giap right. Despite American reconnaissance that tracked massive troop movements down the trail in late 1967, despite intelligence warnings that something big was coming, the political and military leadership failed to act decisively enough to prevent what happened. North Vietnamese forces, supplied and reinforced via the Ho Chi Minh Trail, will launch coordinated attacks across South Vietnam that, while ultimately defeated militarily, will shatter American public support for the war. The trail will continue operating until April 30, 1975, when North Vietnamese tanks roll into Saigon. Over the course of the war, it will move an estimated 1 million troops and 500,000 tons of supplies south, all while being the most photographed, most surveilled, most bombed logistics system in military history. The technology developed to watch the trail, satellite reconnaissance, electronic sensors, real-time surveillance, will become standard in modern warfare. Today's drones, GPS-guided weapons, and intelligence fusion centers all trace their lineage back to the systems first deployed over the jungles of Vietnam and Laos. But the lesson of the Ho Chi Minh Trail remains relevant. Technology can provide unprecedented visibility into enemy operations, but visibility alone cannot win wars. Intelligence must be paired with strategy, strategy must be supported by political will, and political will must be sustained by public support. The NVA commanders were indeed shocked when they realized the extent of American surveillance capabilities. But their shock quickly turned to understanding, and then to adaptation. They learned that being seen wasn't the same as being stopped. They learned that patience, resilience, and willingness to accept casualties could overcome technological superiority. Private Nguyen Van Duc survived the war. He would later say, "We knew they could see us. We knew they could bomb us. But we also knew they couldn't bomb all of us, all the time, everywhere. So we kept walking." That simple truth, that determination and political will can outlast even the most sophisticated technology, is perhaps the most important legacy of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The reconnaissance systems worked. The intelligence was accurate. The technology was revolutionary. But in the end, seeing the enemy wasn't enough to stop them. The trail stands as a testament to human resilience, to the limits of technology, and to the complex relationship between intelligence, political will, and military success. It's a story of shadows and satellites, of cameras that could see through darkness and soldiers who learned to hide in plain sight. It's a story of a battle won in the sky and lost on the ground, a lesson that would echo through every war that followed.